What's up, guys? Thanks for tuning in, checking out some Draftkings for UFC on ESPN 3. This would be Francis Ngannou versus Junior Dos Santos. I guess first I'll go over the bets that I made this week. Unfortunately, I'll suggest what I played, but for the most part, I bet it last week and the odds kind of got out of hand at this point. So let me share my screen and I'll show you what I'm looking at here. But you may not want to play this. I mean, it's up to you, depending on what you're looking to do. Um, with your bankroll. All right, so let's look at this real quick. So what I'm looking at here is I don't mind Francis at all. If you want to take Francis and put him in a parlay, that's completely up to you. I think I think he's pretty safe, to be honest with you. I think -210 is not bad at all. Damian Maya, I also do not have a problem with you playing Damian Maya at all. I can't lie, I didn't play Maya yet. I may, but as of now, didn't play Maya. I do have one of my parlays. I have Francis in one of my parlays. I think this is more or less an even fight, Benavides and Formiga. So I didn't bet anything here. As you see in my DraftKings breakdown, I'm gonna like Pichel, quite a bit. So I'm not putting anything on Roberts there. I also didn't bet Pichel. I'm staying away from Dober Reyes. Now Menafield, I do have two bets on Menafield, and that line actually came down. It was a lot higher the other day. I think just even this morning, I think it was in the -300 area, but -265. I think I got it at -245. I want to say like last weekend. Ricardo Ramos, I don't mind the play on him, but I'm staying away from it personally. And that actually that line went up a little bit at -345. So I mean, play that at your own risk. Eric Anders, I played Eric Anders earlier in the week at -225, so I do like that. Jared Gordon, I do like that -310. I think he's going to win that fight myself. And that's more or less the guys that I bet on. I kind of took those guys and moved them around in parlays. The other guy that I did put in a parlay that I'll be honest, I didn't get a great line on is Maurice Green. I think Maurice Green is going to beat Junior Albini. But as you can see, I definitely lost value. I think I got Maurice Green in the parlay at -145. So obviously it's not great value, but I do think he's going to win that fight. So with that being said, I'm going to get into those are more or less my parlay pieces. I didn't really bet. I didn't bet anything. I have three parlays where I threw two and three guys together. I didn't go with any straight bets this week. 2 weeks ago, I was, let's see, 3-1. That was the last week I was working with the Quant Edge. I gave out four plays in the Quant Edge. Last week I gave out my parlay piece. Obviously, my parlay hit last week, so that cashed. And for the most part, my DraftKings was very good last week. The only fight that unfortunately, I didn't win that I really played on DraftKings. I only played two lineups. I played one cash lineup and one GPP lineup, and I played who did Dan Ige fight? I can't think of his name right now, but whoever Dan Ige fought last week, I had that guy in my. Oh, I can see his face and I can't think of his name, but I had that guy in my cash and GPP lineups. In cash, I had the stack, so it wasn't great, but it wasn't, obviously wasn't terrible. I cashed in my cash games, and in GPPs, it was perfect. I you know, basically doubled up in GPPs. So that's more or less where I was last week. So I'll get right into my DraftKings. I'll give you my cash plays. I'll give you who I played in GPP, and a couple of people mentioned it to me privately in DMs and stuff. Like you basically gave us your plays. I said, and yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you who I'm playing. Right. So if you want to go back and jot down everyone's name and see who I say is a cash and who I say is a GPP play, you can kind of put it together and figure out what my cash lineup is, and you could probably, based on salaries and DraftKings, you can probably figure out how my GPP lines played out also if you want to. Now this week, full disclosure, I played one cash lineup that I'm playing pretty heavy. There's a couple head to heads that I played a couple different combinations of my cash lineup, but my main cash lineup is the one that I played in 90% of my cash. And then GPPs, I went with about 7 lineups this week. And the reason being, let me share my screen and I'll show you what I'm looking at, and then I'll show you why I missed and matched this way. Get back to this. Bear with me 1 second. I'm on a little bit later. My wife's Colombian, so she was actually watching the soccer game, so that's why I'm on a little bit later tonight. So I still have my glass of wine here, glass of water, talking to you guys. All right, so DraftKings. Get down to salary here. So let's start up at the top. Let me just go through guys that I like, and then I'll break down the fights after, because some people are really just here for the DraftKings play, so I'll just give them to you straight out. So if you look at these guys in the 9K range, Dober for me is a fade. He could very easily win this fight, but he's a fade. I'll get more into that later. Anders to me also is a fade in cash, and I didn't really play him in my GPP lines. The only reason is I think he's going to win this fight because Moreira really has no striking at all. I don't think Anders is going to go to the ground with him unless, for whatever reason, he's able to hurt Moreira. But he just doesn't put on a big pace, so there's a chance that he won't score well. And again, those are the two highest priced guys. It's easy to fade those guys. Now, Jared Gordon, let me just show you some of his points here. Obviously, if you played him against Ferrari, you're going to be a little upset with those scores. But you look at his score against Quinones, you look at his score against Hacker Diaz, and you look at his score against Silva, who he actually lost that fight in the third round. If you would have stacked that Silva fight, that was a huge score in DraftKings. And again, up to that point in the fight, I mean, it was anybody's fight. And you can just see 91 points. It was kind of middle of the third round, if I remember it correctly, where Silva was able to knock him out. And they both hit each other with shots. But, I mean, that fight, I'm pretty sure that fight scored over 200 points. So, as you can see, I'm going to be playing that in cash pretty heavily, and that's actually going to be the fight that I stack. In my cash games right now, I stacked Jordan and Moret in cash games. Maybe I'm making a mistake there, but I think that I can get 150 out of those two guys in cash. Ramos, I think, is a GPP play. I wouldn't play him in cash. Menafield, again, I've heard some other people say Menafield, his gas tank, it may not be great. They are 100% correct. It may not be great, but I think Menafield's going to knock out Craig within the first 2 rounds. And I made a point on the Brews and Bets podcast the other day that we did with Tyler and CG, and I told them I think the difference is that Menafield now knows, based on the fact that Kennedy, I don't even know how to say his last name, but Kennedy is the guy that Craig fought last time, and they fight out of the same gym, Fortis MMA. So Coach said is definitely going to be able to tell Menafield, just don't even follow him to the ground, make the referee stand him up. Unless he's hurt, I would not even go to the ground with him. Roosevelt Roberts is another guy I'm really not looking to play. So if you look at the top 6 guys, I'm really only looking to play Gordon and Menafield, which brings me into I basically have 100% NGannou in my lineups. And I have a very high number of lineups with Dalche Nungambula, I think is how we're going to say his name. So I have a lot of lineups with Nungambula. Now, I didn't play Nungambula in cash originally. I had Damian Maya. And again, if you don't like Nungambula and you don't want to trust him, that's fine. You can play Damian Maya and just put him in there. I think both of these guys are going to win. I think Maya is going to be able to get the submission in rounds 1 or 2. I think Nungambula is going to be able to finish this fight, and I'm gonna call for it to be a first round finish. But with all that being said, if you want the safer play, I think it may be Maya. It's obviously a tougher fight. This line got out of control, so Dalche now is like minus. Let's go over and check that out. But Dalche is minus 320 right now. So with that being said, play it at your own risk. But I'm pretty I'm pretty comfortable playing him. So those are more or less the plays in the top tier that I'm looking at. If you go to the bottom tier, just so you know what I'm thinking of, the guys that I sprinkled in, Polo Reyes. Again, I'm not playing Dover, so just keep that in mind. Polo Reyes. Dan Moret is my cash stack, and I actually have a lineup. One of my GPP lineups is with Moret by himself. Gordon is going to come forward, so if Moret catches him, again, Gordon has been finished his last two fights. And Vince Michelle. Vince Michelle is the third guy at this bottom tier that I'm looking to play. I'm really not playing anybody else. I have no Martin. I do have some Rivas. I think I have one GPP with Formiga. I have no Albini. And then again, I'm playing green. So of my, what I say, one cash. And basically what I did with my cash, the reason I have a couple different cash lineups for head-to-heads, I just want to see what they score, is that I did a lot of different arrangements of Polo Reyes, Dan Moret, and Vince Michelle. So some in my cash lineup, I left a little money on the table with some of those lineups there. All right, so let's go fight by fight now, and I'll break this down for you fight by fight, what I'm thinking and why I'm playing, who I'm playing. So whether you know this about me or not, I usually play cash every week. I usually go with one cash lineup, sometimes two. For the most part, I'm going to say this week I really only have one. Those three other head to heads are really just combinations of those three lower price guys. But my core up top, when you hear who I'm playing in cash, is the same core that I'm playing in all of those cash lineups. Then every week I don't always play this many GPP lines, but I am playing 8 GPP lines this week. This fight right here to start it off is Maurice Green and Junior Albini, and I'm on Maurice Green. He's my pick to win this fight. Either way, I don't think this fight is going to score. I don't think it's going to finish. I really do see this fight going to decision. So I have a pretty heavy lean that it's going to go to decision. So with that being said, does Albini have a chance to finish it? This is a heavyweight fight here. I think Albini has a shot, but I don't think that, he's out. I mean, you look at these striking numbers. He's not a high volume striker by any sense. He's also not really a takedown guy. I mean, he did get 2 takedowns here, but he's not really a takedown guy. He does have some BJJ, but I don't want to say he has stuff that I haven't personally seen in the UFC. So I don't know what he's going to use in the UFC, but I'm not playing Albini at all. I really don't think he's as good as he was advertised when he first came in. Now, Maurice Green, I don't think he's great either, but I think if you look back at his last fight against Jeff Hughes, I think this fight can play out very similarly if he can keep him at range. He had 70 strikes, 65 Draftkings points, which again isn't a great price. At 6,900, it was a pretty decent price. But I just don't think that there's going to be a lot of strikes. I don't think he's really going to knock him down. I think he's going to use the jab. He's going to use his punches to keep distance and use those kicks. He's a kickboxer, so he can get those kicks up and keep his distance that way. So I'm on Maurice Green to win the fight. I do have some Maurice Green in my GPPs. I have 0 Albini, but I don't think the fight is going to score overly well, to be honest with you. This next fight is kind of a toss-up to me. I don't love Emily Whitmire. I think a couple of her last wins are against lower level opponents, so I don't think many people were really on her in the last 2 fights, but she did win. And then Rivas, the issue with her is she failed the drug test. I don't even know if she actually failed the drug test. I think there was like some kind of an agent, or it was contaminated, they said. So I'm not really sure exactly what the story or the narrative behind that drug test was. But with that being said, USADA suspended her for 2 years, but then cut the suspension based on the fact that they kind of cut it for a couple other people and allowed them to fight in the UFC. So she has been training at America Top Team in Florida. We mentioned that the other day. It is on her Instagram page. Now, how much she's been training there, I'm not really sure. But this is a girl who a lot of people on other pods have brought up her loss a few years ago when she got knocked out. I think she was 21 or 22 years old. when she suffered that knockout. So I'm not really overly concerned with that. She's now 25 years old. There's got to be some ring rust coming into this. She looked pretty strong today, and if you look at the face-offs, the UFC face-offs tonight, Whitmire is like real intense all of a sudden. I'm not really sure what's going on with her, but she got right in Rebus's face. Rebus went right back at her. I played some Whitmire and GPP. I played some Rebus. I put them both in a couple lineups. Maybe like I think I actually played Whitmire in two and Rebus in two. I almost regret it right now. I may even change that a little bit to be honest with you. All right, next fight. Dalche. I am all over Dalche. I have Dalche in most of my lineups. I originally didn't have him in my cash line. Actually originally had him in my cash lineup, so he is a cash play for me right now. I had taken him out for Damian Maya, but then I put him back in, and I think the reason I put him back in is I think Dalche is going to be able to knock this guy out in the first and the second round. So if you get the knockout, you get the knockdown and the knockout. That's 10 points and either 90 or 75 points. Whereas if you played Damian Maya, you're probably just getting the 90 points for the first round submission or 75. You're not going to get a knockdown. You may get a takedown, or he may just take the back, from a standing position, and it may eventually get to the ground. So it depends on how they score that. But I do like Dalche Nungiambula in cash and GPPs. He's actually in my cash lineup. Townsend is a fade for me. This next fight, Gordon and Moret, this is a cash game stack for me. I'm going to stack them in my cash game this week. I think that Gordon, he's a little risky. Again, I showed him before. Just because if you look back, he did get knocked out in his last two fights. KO TKO'd. If you remember back to the Ferreira fight, he actually got kicked in the groin twice in round one, and then finished. In the Silva fight, that was a back and forth fight. A lot of takedowns, a lot of significant strikes, a lot of just different avenues that fight went. Silva's very tough, and he was able to get that finish. I think that Moret is going to be tough enough to take a lot of what Gordon has coming his way, and he's going to dish it out. So that's why I'm stacking this. I'm hoping it gets into that second, third round, maybe finishes late in the third round, and these guys stack up, grab a whole lot of points in because of the pace. And again, when Gordon fights, there's always pace because he brings the pace. So that's why I'm stacking this in cash this week. I don't mind, obviously, Gordon and GPPs. I have him in a bunch of my GPP lineups, and I actually have Moret in one of my GPP lineups in addition to that cash lineup. This next fight, Marrero, I didn't play him. I didn't play him in cash or GPPs. I have zero Marrero. Now, with that being said, he's a specialist. He's a submission specialist. He's a ground guy. If you want to play him, by all means. If you're playing a lot of lineups, again, you know how many lineups I'm playing, and I'm not playing him in any of those lineups. But if you're playing, 20, 22, I think the one tournament is. The other tournament at the $5, I believe, is like 27 lineups. Then obviously, if you're playing like the 150, you may want to put him in there because he is a submission specialist. Eric Anders. I have Eric Anders in zero lineups. I actually have a bet on him. I think he's going to win this fight. I just don't trust him to score well in Draftkings, so I have him in zero lineups right now. All right, let's get to this next fight. Newsom I have in zero lineups, and Ramos I have in zero lineups. And I'm interested to watch this fight. I'm not interested to bet it or to play it on DraftKings. I can very well see this going to decision. I can see Newsom giving Ramos a little bit of trouble if he can get a takedown and maybe grind that around, slow down the pace a little bit. Ramos, on the other hand, if you look back at the fight against who was it last time? Said Nurmagomedov, um, he basically didn't strike. That fight didn't finish as quickly as it was round one, but there were like 2 minutes into the fight and he really didn't throw anything. So, with that basically, being said, um, I don't know what it was waiting for. Even if you look at these significant strike numbers, these were all fights that went into the third round. Zahabi was pretty late, even though he finished that. But this guy's throwing 40 and 50, or landing 40, 50 significant strikes. Um, I don't know. I'm not a huge fan. I think he's a good talent. He's still very young. I think he's only 23 years old still, but I'm just not playing him. Now, Paul Craig and Menafield. I'm on Menafield. I'm on Menafield in cash. I'm on Menafield in GPPs. I think he finishes Paul Craig in the first or second round. I think that Paul Craig, again, if you're playing a lot of lineups, he is a submission guy. He has a pretty good triangle from bottom. He was able to lock up two guys over the last few fights in that triangle from bottom. He also likes to just get the fight to the ground, throw himself on the ground, and hope that you come after him. Unfortunately for him, Kennedy did go after him. I was actually at that fight working for MMA India, so I was ringside. And I just don't know why Kennedy would go to the ground with him. So I think Menafield, the best thing that he can do, unless he knows he's got him really hurt, I think the best thing Menafield can do is just keep this on the feet, make the referee stand him up. Don't let him, keep jumping onto his back, and just win this fight on the feet. That is my only concern with this fight. If Craig's able to kind of make the referee stand him up, that could go 5-10 seconds at a time before he gets up. Fight for 30 seconds, go back to the back, 5-10 seconds, just grind out a fight here. I really want this fight to be finished in the first round, so I'm playing Menafield because I think it's going to finish in the first round. Drew Dober and Polo Reyes. The issue here is that I think that this is going to be a striking fight. You can see that Dober had 2 takedowns against Tuck. Obviously, he doesn't want to go to the ground with Dariush. Berkman was a quick knockout, so he's probably not going to go to the ground anyway. Camacho is actually pretty good on the ground, so that may be why he didn't go to the ground. But for the most part, he's not a high volume wrestler. He really has never been a high volume wrestler. He can wrestle, he can get out of bad spots, but I think this is going to play out on the feet, and Polo Reyes on the feet is going to be able to handle himself. So this fight is down at 155. I think Polo Reyes has a shot, and at 6.7K, I think Dober is going to have to finish him on the feet to knock this guy out early is going to be tough. Even if you look at Reyes' last fight, look at his previous opponents. Vic obviously leveled him, but if you look at the Hadjovic fight, Hadjovic took him down to the ground. I was a little surprised about that. I didn't know Hadjovic had much of a ground game. I don't even think he did have much of a ground game, to be honest with you. I think he was just able to see an advantage, to kind of check the advantage, see if it was good enough, and it was. So if Polo Reyes is on the ground, based on what Hadjovic did to him, I think that Dober can finish him. I just don't think that this is going to go to the ground. I think he wants to strike. So that's the way I see this fight going. So again, I have 0 Drew Dober, and I do have some Polo Reyes. Actually, a decent amount of Polo Reyes. He's in the cash lineup and GPPs. Vince Purcell and Roberts. I'm on Vince Purcell here. I think I have Roberts in one of my GPP lines. I have a bunch of Vince Purcell, and I do have him in my cash lineup. I just think that if you look at Vince Purcell, the guys that he's lost to some studs. And again, he kind of held his own against Gillespie that last fight. And I know he eventually got subbed, but fighting a round and a half against Gillespie, which is more or less what he did in that last fight, it's like fighting like 4 rounds against Roberts. So I think that he's going to be able to hold his own. He's not a high volume striker here, as you can see, but I think that this fight may go into the third round. So I'm hoping he can score 30 points in a cash game. That's more or less what I'm looking at. And if he can keep it on the ground and stay away from the subs, he has a shot to, again, like you look at this 8 takedown number. He's not taking Roberts down. He doesn't want to, mess around with this guy on the ground. I don't think, but I think that he can keep it on the feet, and kind of get some strikes. So I wouldn't be surprised if he had 30 points on DraftKings, 60 significant strikes, with a shot to win if it does stay on the feet and they're just going to strike back and forth. But he's going to have to pick up that volume a little bit, I think, to beat Roberts. One thing about Roberts is he is pretty long, but I think the difference in length is only like an inch or two. I don't think it's that drastic. So Damian Maia and They have a Martin, but this is Anthony Rocco Martin, so it should be R Martin at this point. That's what he's going by. I'm on Damian Maya. I think he's going to be able to get on his back at some point. I think he's going to be able to finish Anthony Martin. Um, Anthony Martin is he's an opportunistic finisher on the feet. He's kind of been picked apart by a couple guys on the feet at this point. Even if you go back to he kind of had a late finish against Jake Matthews, and Jake Matthews, you could have argued that I think Anthony Martin, I think it was round one. He could have won round one, but Jake Matthews definitely won one of those two rounds. It could have been 1-1 going into the third, or it could have been Matthews 2-0 going into the third, and then he was able to hurt Matthews and finish him in that third round. And if you look at the striking numbers are not very high. Sergio Moraes, Ryan LaFleur, who that was in Vegas. I was at that fight. That was the McGregor Habib fight. He looked very, very good, but again, he basically just hit LaFleur with that right hand anytime LaFleur tried to come in on him, and LaFleur really couldn't get many takedowns in that fight. So call that what it is. But I'm on Damian Maya. I almost played him in cash. I went back and forth playing him and Dalche, but I wound up going with Dalche. So take it for what it's worth. But if you want a little bit less risk, I think you can go with Maya. You kind of know what you're getting with him. This next fight, I played a little bit of Benavidez and a little bit of Formiga in GPPs. I think this is more or less a 50-50 fight, so I don't really like the price of Benavidez all that much. But with that being said, if Benavidez can keep it on the feet, he's probably going to win the striking-based decision. Formiga really wants to get on your back, so if Formiga can get on your back, Benavidez has never been finished by a submission. So if Formiga is able to slow the fight down, get on his back, win rounds, taking his back, how many points is he really going to score if he doesn't get that finish? And that's my concern here. That's more or less what I'm looking at with this fight. Sprinkle this a little bit into GPPs. And then this main event here. I'm on Francis Ngannou. I'm on Francis pretty good. And I have 0 Junior Dos Santos. So that obviously if Junior upsets him, that will make or break my night here. I have Ngannou in cash. I have Ngannou in GPPs. And for the most part, if you want a little bit of a breakdown, this is more or less what I think is gonna happen. I think that Ngannou can definitely come out and knock him out early if Junior tries to get inside or kind of, if his range is a little bit off. I kind of get the feeling that Junior is going to play from the outside, very similar to the way that he fought Lagoy, even off couple. I guess it was 2 or 3 fights ago. Tried to come in, pop shot him, get out of the pocket. He didn't want to exchange in the pocket. I think that's more or less what Junior's going to try to do here. Unfortunately, I think Francis is going to catch him at some point. I hope it's the first round. I'm not sure if it is, but I think Francis is going to catch him. I don't think Francis is going to change his game plan. I think that Francis knows that he wants to counterpunch, and I think that's more or less what he's going to do. Now, Junior, by the other hand, also wants to counterpunch, but I think that he's gonna have a little bit more of a plan to try to attack and get punches off. So again, could this turn into one of those Francis Derek Lewis fights where they just kind of stare at each other, wait for the other guy to throw the first punch, just for the chance to counterpunch? It could go into the second round, could go into the third round if that happens. I hope it doesn't because I have a lot of Francis, and I'm hoping for that first or second round knockout. I'm hoping for that 10-point knockdown, and then I'm hoping for the finish and obviously get that 90 or 75 points on Draftkings. So that's more or less what I'm looking at. Again, I'm giving you all my plays. Those are the guys that I'm playing. And anybody that said I fade, they're not in any of my lineups. Barring injury, I basically locked my stuff in right now. I don't plan on changing anything else. So this again is my my DraftKings breakdown. Just get a sip of water. I'm going to try to do this every Friday night. Just do a little solo pod, 15, 20 minutes, maybe 25 minutes. Just give you my thoughts on the card. I know there's a lot of shows out there, and if you listen to ours, obviously, we'd really appreciate it. Hit me back on Twitter. You can DM me. Let me know any of your thoughts. If you like the plays, if you don't like the plays, you want a little bit more of a breakdown. We do brews and bets. This week we did it Wednesday night, so just about every fight was on the card is mentioned in the brews and bets. All right, good luck this weekend, guys.